Judge this week finalized the dismissal of a lawsuit filed against two Dothan police officers who detained a First Amendment auditor. George Metz II filed a federal lawsuit in 2021 alleging that officers D. Bridges and J. Dodson violated his rights and illegally detained him in handcuffs. Metz went to the Department of Human Resources in Dothan and began video recording the lobby of the state agency. Metz refused to comply with a security officer's order to stop recording. A lower court sided with Metz, saying the officers could be held personally liable, but the appeal court overturned that decision.